Okay, good afternoon. I hope you don't mind doing this on a Monday. I didn't see any other good day to do it. Friday wouldn't be any good because people are going to be gone traveling, and nobody wants to do it on a Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And I get an infusion on Tuesday, and I take some steroids, and I lose my voice on Tuesday. Or it gets I don't lose it all the way, but it's pretty hard to hear. So Monday was my obvious day to go ahead and do this, and I just wanted to get it out of the way. Now, as you can see from the PDF I sent you, we're going to talk about lower risk entries with pivots, and I'll talk about what a pivot is, both confirmed and unconfirmed, and we'll go through a bunch of examples. And I'll just kind of ad-lib this. I was going to make some more extensive notes, but I just didn't get around to it over the weekend. So anyway, I'm sure there's plenty to talk about. And the first thing I want to point out is that I'm using two charts here rather than three. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I wanted more screen area for my daily chart and my weekly chart. And if I want to see a monthly chart, I'll just click on the weekly and hit the alternate M key, and you can see that that changes it to monthly. Now, a lot of times I do use the three chart setup, but I think in most instances the daily and weekly is adequate. So that's why I switched to it. Also, when I click on up here on the fundamentals, I get all the information in here. When I was using three charts, this section would be excluded, and I like to have it here so I can look at the fundamental information, flip through the screens, and get all the information I need. So that's why I'm going to a two-window chart, but I don't think you should ever use fewer than two charts, the daily and the weekly. And I know several of you like to look at much shorter time frame charts to get in and out, and that's probably from being around Gil Morales. I'm just saying that. I know Gil's a very short-term trader, though, looking for intraday entries and so on. I don't do much of that because I really don't have the time, and I would prefer not to. What I'm trying to do is to hold on to positions longer, and I get a totally different perspective when looking at the weekly and the daily charts. Yes, you can use the intraday charts to get in, but if you start looking at the intraday charts to get in and out, you're going to be in and out all the time. So, but whatever you like to do, and however you're making money, I guess that's what it all comes down to. Okay, let's take a look here at what I'm doing. As you can see on the PDF file, I have an area here called pivots. It's under the end of day and intraday stock scans. And I have bullish pivots, unconfirmed and confirmed. Now, I have to work with the fields that are available in HGSI, and these work, but they could be a little more precise if I had the exact tools, but I think I've figured it out well enough that everything here works. Now, I believe there is code available for Thinkorswim. I would have to, I've never put it in because I like to work within HGSI, and like I said, I believe this works well enough. So we're going to go ahead and work with what I have, and I'll just show you what I look for. The unconfirmed, these are pivots which are making lower. Well, this is as of yesterday. I'll just use this stock that's up here on the screen, you can see Photronics. It had a lower low than the prior day, and the prior day also had a higher high. Now this was unconfirmed until today. Here's the buy point right here above this, and then if you really want to wait for what is supposedly called the confirmed buy point, it would be up here. But I prefer to try to put a buy stop in this area here because you're risking less money. And yes, they do fail. None of this stuff works all the time, but you can see when a pivot is formed and you get in right here at this area, you can be ahead in a very short period of time, and your risk is just down here below this pivot. Now, combining, I'm going to get this out of the way for now, combining the daily and the weekly over here on Photronics, and this is a semiconductor devices. I thought about taking this stock today, but I was late, so I really didn't want to chase it. What do we see over here? We see a weekly chart where the stock is trending. There's a series of higher highs. Here's a higher high, here's a higher low when compared to these lows down here. And then here's a new higher high when it breaks past this area right here. And then this stock holds pretty steady right here. There's a very little movement or selling here. Now, what I like to look for are white candles. Now here's another higher high. I'm just going to put this in here while I'm thinking about it because it broke past, well, I guess if you really want to be picky, it would have to break past the wick up here, but either place it's a higher high and it's holding steady. Went up here and there was some price rejection of the high right here, but it's still holding pretty steady. And then last week when the market was down, you can see that there was a shakeout. And that shakeout is visible over here in the daily on these 3 days here. But on Friday, you can also see that buyers stepped into this, and that's what formed the lower wick. So just looking at this, I think you would probably agree with me that this weekly chart has been strong over the past several weeks. And yes, there was a shakeout last week, but didn't materialize. And even though this is an effort to fall flag, notice there is a lower wick here. That lower wick corresponds to the pivot on this this candle right here. And then today, like I said, the buy point would be right here. Now, all of these don't work out or don't have this same look to them, and I'm going to go through several and we'll talk about them. Any questions so far? We've had one more person come in, so I'm going to post the PDF file again. Whoever that new person is. And you can just download it. So anyway, what we're looking for, or that what I'm screening for, I'm looking for stocks that are exhibiting a pivot. And the pivot will always have a lower wick below it, but it will never be confirmed until it takes out the prior high. So going back to Thursday, this candle had a pivot too. You can see the lower wick right here, but it was certainly not confirmed. You have to wait for that confirmation. And if you have a weekly chart, which is in an uptrend, that puts the odds more in your favor that this stock will reverse and will continue higher. Doesn't always happen, but we're playing the odds, and we're looking for lower risk entries rather than chasing stocks. Okay, so let's do this. I've got I believe I've got the updating running in the background, and hopefully that won't slow me down very much. I am in all securities. I'm using the number one low pivot unconfirmed, and I'm going to switch to the intraday version. Now, what the intraday version, as you all know, gives us the advantage of we're looking at the same number of stocks, 668, but we can see which of the stocks are showing strength today. And the stocks at the top of this list intraday could very well be confirmed at this point. So let's just look at, this is not prearranged. I'm just doing what I'm seeing right now. Genweld Holding says commercial and residential building and equipment. That's a group it's in. It is up 7.44% today, trading near the top of its daily range on heavier volume. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to start over here on the weekly chart. And you can see that this weekly chart is certainly not in an uptrend like the other chart was that I just showed you. But if we look closer at it, you can see that there was a reversal here. It paused, and then this, let me zoom back in on this and bring up my arrows. So here's your low. Here's your reversal. And even though this is a black candle, it's higher. It got higher than the close here. So it's looking to start to uptrend. Now here it was down, formed a wick, didn't take out this high, but the following week it did take out the high. So over the past, what is this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, over the past 7 weeks, you could say that this stock is in an uptrend now. It's got some weekly resistance here. I should have drawn that a little bit higher, but you get the idea. But it is now trending up. And what do we have over here? This is Genweld Holding as of today. This isn't nearly as powerful a weekly chart as we saw on Photronics, I believe is what it was. But it has reversed its course because it's made a series of higher highs, higher lows and higher highs, and it's at resistance right now trying to break out. Now moving over to the daily chart. What I like to look for are Vpa patterns in addition to the pivots. Now here is the pivot that I screened for, right here. Here's the lower wick. This lower wick has to be 30% up the candle. In other words, it's a black candle and it has to get nearly a third of the way back up before it passes this screen. Now this candle here has a higher high than this candle, has a higher low. So this was the unconfirmed pivot. But at this point today, it becomes a confirmed pivot. And we're getting an effort to rise because there's strong volume, and this is trading at the high of the day, it looks like, or very close to it. Yes, we have some resistance right here, but it is doing well and the volume is running above normal. Now I'm going to switch screens here. I'm just going to go up to my price and volume daily, and this information is here in the warehouse. It's also in the chart. I like to look primarily at the chart view. I just like the way it's organized. So it's up 7.44%, and the percent volume to the 90-day moving average volumes up 94.9% today, and you can see that that is represented over here on the right-hand side. Now, there was a change, a slight update to HGSI software. last week, and one of the new options is I always used last close or open to close for candles, but I'm experimenting with and changing some of the charts, and I may change all of them to a volume change one period. I don't know who requested that, probably Jeffrey, but what it does, if we have a candle where the volume is less than the prior day, it's going to be red rather than green. So you can see on the past 2 days on this stock that we have 2 green candles. Now let me go back in here and show, I believe there's going to be a difference here. If I went back to my open to close, because this is a black candle here, you can see that this is a red bar. So the open is here, the close is here, it's a red bar. I think it makes more sense to, well, I'm updating right now, to change it so we see that where there's a volume change, the colors correspond to that rather than open to close. It's just always been traditional on candle charts to have it open to close. So I believe I've already changed this in your chart, this chart, so it's in the add-on. If you're doing the add-on updates, you're going to have exactly what I have, because whenever I make changes, I just go ahead and put the files up there, so yours is looking the same as mine. I'm removing my sweatshirt. It's warm here, or at least upstairs where I am. Okay, so getting back to this, you can see that this looks sloppy over here in the past. I may not have really paid attention to this stock, but when you start breaking these candles down and looking for higher highs and higher lows, it's a lot more precise, and you don't overlook stocks like this. Genweld Holdings. Now let's take a look here quickly. Yeah, you know, the earnings are inconsistent. No, Tom, I'm sitting here in my t-shirt. Okay. So, you know, that's another good example, and I'm in the low pivot unconfirmed stocks intraday, which makes much more sense if you're using a Thinkorswim and driving the data. But by the way, Thinkorswim, I really don't think we'll ever lose access to it or the quotes. I called my niece, who works in the IT department for Schwab. She's down in Austin, where the primary move is going to go, or down in the Austin area, and she said Schwab wanted to buy TD because she said, and this was her division, she said our trading platform is crap. Those were his exact words. So they wanted to combine all the assets of TD Ameritrade and get access to Thinkorswim. So I certainly don't think it's going to disappear. I know there was some concern about that, but this is going to take some time to transition, and I told her to keep me in the loop when she learns anything new. So I'll keep everybody posted as I learn things. Anyway, let's just go down to the next one here. Now this is clearly a downtrend on this Orchard Therapeutics. You can see why I like to look at the weekly charts. Yes, it's riskier when the trend is down, because you're fighting a lot of sentiment, a lot of negative sentiment. And by the way, let's go to a different chart. This is another chart that I use a lot. And why do I use this chart? Because I get an instant reading of where, or the condition of, I'm looking for something on my desktop here. Bear with me. Well, I can see instantly the trends. Let's see, what group is this? Biotech and pharma. And the group has been going up, but when we put this chart in context, you can see that the trend is clearly down on the weekly. It hasn't traded enough, long enough to generate VPA flags on the weekly because we need 120 periods. We're getting the VPA flags here. We are starting to see some bottoming here. Here's your pivot and stopping volume, and here's your confirmation. Yeah, it's confirmed today, but just realize if you ever take a stock like this, you've got a lot of moving averages and resistance on candles to deal with. So the idea really, when you're doing this strategy, or when I'm doing it anyway, I like to look for stocks that are in uptrends. They have pulled back and consolidated, and you don't have all the overhead resistance risk. So you have to think of the context of where you are with a stock. And I mean, I wouldn't touch this. Some people may want to touch it, but I don't see any reason to do it. It just makes a lot more sense to go to another view, and I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to limit my stocks to low pivots with the fan up. So I'm going to click on this. We're going from 668 securities. I'll go to the intraday to 293. So, you know, it cuts the number of stocks in half right there. And what do I know? I know that these stocks are going to be in an uptrend as far as the fan. And the fan, let me, it's updating, just one second. As soon as the market closes, I'll do a final update, and I'll turn that updating off. Okay, so here we go. And here is the weekly chart over here. You can see there have been a series of higher highs and higher lows. This is actually a higher high and a lower low here, but it is regaining. So it got down here to the gap, penetrated it, but it started going back up again. I look at this when you get a couple of weekly bars, 2 or 3 that are showing higher highs. That's kind of a trend change back on the weeklies. Now here's a couple down days. Here is last week, which was a week in the market where stocks really didn't do a lot, but you can see that buyers are stepping in today. This candle represents today. It doesn't represent 7 days back. It represents today. Okay, so where are we here? Well, here's a counter trend on the 3 and the 6. The 3 is green, the 6 is red. It's a counter trend because the 3 went down below the 6. And here is our pivot today on this stock, because the wick formed on Friday. Where did it get down to? It got down to the 100-day moving average, went a little bit below it, but you can see today that it opened right at the 100. So it is finding support at the 100-day moving average. Now the 3 did not get up through the 6 today, but the buy point, I did that wrong. Let me do that again. Actually, I'll just make this chart bigger so we can see it better. The buy point would be a few cents above the high on Friday. And that would have been a pretty good move from here to here today. Group strong. This is a chart that I use a lot because it gives me everything I want to see. Volume point of control turned positive. I can look at the expansion contraction windows. This stock has been under contraction, which corresponds to the 3 crossing down through the 6. Now, when this goes back up through there, this histogram will go above the 0 line. But the early buy is today right here. I'm going to just put this, okay, let me do this. I'm going to do alternate A, and I'm just going to drag it up from the buy point to where it currently is today. And that's 5.7% today after the buy. That's what this red line represents. So this would have been another excellent low-risk entry from a pivot. And this all comes up in HGSI. It's a specialty pharma. I don't know how many of you would even want to touch it, but it's there. And once again, this worked. Now I'm going to show you how the personality of this stock has changed over the months. What is this? This is 7/29 of 19, which is not that long ago. And this stock was clearly in a downtrend. You can see the histogram on the 3 versus the 6 and the 6 versus the 18 was negative, popped up a little bit here and here, but the fan did not go into effect. The fan is not in effect really on this stock until right here when all these moving averages are crossed. So these biotechs are all over the place. You need to be careful with them. But the fan did not kick into place, and it remained in place even though this pulled back here. And that's why the signal was generated today. Let me see if I can find a stock which has been in a longer term uptrend. There's a lot of medical here. Well, we don't want TD because we know what's boosting that one. Now this is no, the filter's not on. No wonder. Sorry about that. I was going to say that is not in that fan is not in place. Zynga, I don't want Zynga. I'm going to go in and turn the updating off so I don't have to wait for it. Darn it. I don't know why it won't let me. Well, it must still be updating is why. Patience here. Okay, let me bring that screen or that chart back up. If it'll let me. It must be doing a final update. Even though I turned it off. Okay, here we go. Let's do one more thing, and I'm going to show you something else that is of interest. I'm going to go in and rebuild the indexes in the industry groups. And we're going to take a look at a little top down on this. This just takes a minute or less. Okay, I'll get this out of the way. All right, now let's look here. Is my filter on? Yes, there are 293 stocks. Here's a name, Cabot, and well, this is a pretty good example right here. This stock, you can see, was clearly in an uptrend. Earnings, I don't know if earnings came out last week or not, but there was a very heavy volume last week and an effort to fall, but you can see that there's an inside day here, or a harami, or however you pronounce it. And it's just an inside bar, and this represents what's happening today. So, trend was up. This is only one down week, so that would not qualify for the 2 weeks in a row to change the trend, although it was obviously pretty painful for people who owned the stock and wrote it down, but the trend is still up, in my opinion. And here, if you look closely, here's the 200, here's the 100, here's the 50, and here's the 18. And until that 18 crosses down below the blue or the 50, the fan is still in place. So what do we have today? We have Cabot, which is semiconductor manufacturing, coming off an oversold level. Here is Friday's pivot. So there were buyers stepping in on Friday. You can see the wick was formed. It actually closed near the top of its daily range. And then today, there was a slight gap. So you would have had to buy on the open to get the best price. But this gray bar represents an oversold level. We call it a bingo. I believe that's something that Ian came up with. Well, I know that he was involved in it. I was not. But anyway, you can see that there was a test for supply at the same time, and then a nice confirmation today in a stock where the fan is still intact. So this would be a low risk entry in a stock where the fan is in place. I mean, there's been some strong selling pressure over the past several days, but here's your low risk entry. Now looking back down here, you can see that the volume point of control 10-day turned positive. There's no pocket pivots today, and the expansion is not enough yet to get this back above the 0 line because the 3 is still below the 6. But it does qualify for that low risk entry point. And it's better if you can pick these stocks up at a low risk point. Now, there's no guarantee that this stock is going to continue to go up. But if you happen to buy it here at the open, you've got a profit built into it already. Volume was above normal. You can see that here also. Now I'm just going through examples. I hope you don't mind this, because I'm trying to reinforce, what a pivot is and the confirmation. Now this is a weekly chart, Williams-Sonoma, which is trending up. It's been a little loose, but it certainly has held up, and I consider this weekly chart to be in an uptrend. What do we have here today? Here's your action on Friday. This is a pivot because there is a higher candle over here, higher low and a higher high, and on the confirmation side today, there is a higher high and a higher low than this candle right here. So I hope you can see the advantage of looking at stocks like this. you know, it's all been ingrained in us for so many years, if you've been doing this very long, to only look for stocks that are breaking out to new highs or close to new highs. And as we all know, that can be a very dangerous game. I like the pivot concept, especially when you start factoring in the weekly charts to look for strength over here. You're looking for a pullback, and you're getting into stocks that hopefully will start trending up and take out the prior day's high. Let's look at Brooks Automation. That's another semiconductor manufacturer. Weekly chart, higher highs, higher lows. Came down here hard, held. Here's two weekly white candles. So the trend reversed there, and only one weekly down candle. Market was generally weak last week, and that's why we got that one. But here we go again. The fan is in place. Here's your pivot. This low is higher than this low, and this candle is higher. I'm sorry, this low is higher than this low, and obviously this candle is higher than this. And here is an effort to rise today. VPOC went positive. 3 did not go up through the 6 again, but it's close. So it's got a lot of things going for it if this group, the manufacturing group, continues to go higher. Tom, you have to look a lot of charts, but I haven't really looked, a lot of charts, and I've found several good examples. And I'm just using the low pivot screen, unconfirmed. They have to be confirmed. Now here's one that Paul Reike likes. Paul's on here, and these are near the 18-day exponential moving average, or within 5% of it. And here is a stock, American Woodmark Corporation. It's number 1 here, and you can see that on the weekly chart, very powerful weekly chart over the past several weeks. And this didn't come down much, but this still qualifies as a pivot because this low was lower than the prior day's low. And look at this, it broke out. Here's a stock where you get a pivot breakout. It's breaking out to a new high, and there's a pocket pivot. You can see that the expansion histograms are both green here. All 3 of them are green. And this clear back here is where the VPOC kicked in. Now I want to show you a couple of charts here while I'm thinking of it. I mentioned this on if you look at your PDF file down towards the bottom, the visual filter backtest chart views. If I'm going to go to those right now, and if I can find them right here, and I'm going to use the first one, and this one is linked to the warehouse view. Let me get this out of the way. So if I click on this, and when the conditions are met, if I come through the warehouse first to the charts, it shows me where there were pivots in the past. And did they work out? Generally they did. This worked out for a few days. This was a good move. Here's a pivot. There was not a buy on this one. That could be considered a buy. Well, this is a buy. Came down here. Here's a buy. Didn't really go anywhere, but you wouldn't have been stopped out. Doesn't look like. Here's another one with the confirming buy. And then just the past 2 days, these pivots were, or these lows were lower than one another. So we got 2 green bars together, and here's your confirmation. Excuse me, I had to take a drink. Now, I don't want anybody complaining about that drink. I'm referring to Jeffrey's report where somebody wrote him and complained about his coughing or whatever. I thought that was pretty rude of them. Jeffrey puts an awful lot of work into those weekly reports. I would never do the work that he does with his PowerPoints and so on. That's time consuming. Anyway, getting back on track. So you can see that this has worked very well. Now here's another chart. The one just below it. These are unconfirmed pivots. So you can just apply this to any stock that you're looking at. And the difference here is that, well, let me go back to the first chart. You don't know this, but you might. Some people do that have been around for a long time. But there's a charting VFB filter. You can use the charting filter setting. Now what that means is that if you click through from the warehouse when the conditions are met, then the bars will appear. Okay? And as you can see, as I've shown you, when the conditions are met, the bars appear. Now let me go down to the next one. I call this the Unconfirmed Pivots chart. Now, and the difference is, if I can figure out where my settings are, I haven't looked at this for so long. Okay, I've just got this set on 1 year. Use this filter. Now the difference is, on those two settings, I attached the filter. Low pivot VPS, all securities. I have one for up and one for down. I'm not going to show you both of them because there's no need to. But you can use this as soon as this recalculates. You can use this and type any stock in here. And, give me a symbol. How about, let's look at NVIDIA. That got an upgrade today. And you can see that every time there was an occurrence of this, now these were never filled here because the high was not taken out. But you get down here, here is a low pivot on NVIDIA. And there's an effort to rise, and this was the buy point right in here. And that was a nice move. Here's another one. Buy point in here. Only lasted, well, probably would not have been stopped. Well, it may have been stopped out. But anyway, it shows you every time there are occurrences of these low pivots, and then you just look to the right and see if these pivots would have been fulfilled or if you would have taken them. Now right there, if your low's below this, you're still in the stock at this point. It's pretty handy if you like this technique. Let's do another one. I'll put ENPH back. John, you're on today. You're in ENPH today. And here is an example of, you can see the stock. It got whacked after earnings, although earnings were good. It's been sitting here. These are low pivots, and this one, so I lost internet or something temporarily, or Zoom went down. I don't know which one, but Anyway, I believe I was saying that this is a pretty handy way to evaluate any chart by using the VFB Unconfirmed Pivots chart. Because you can look back in time and see where these pivots occurred and if they were purchased or valid. And here is, I was using ENPH because John Randolph is in that, and it was up, what, 9% today. And you can see that it's been basing. There were a couple of VPA flags here. Here's a negative VPA flag. But as of Thursday, here's your low pivot. The confirmation was actually on Friday, right here. And John was in, or is in, and you can see that the group turned up today, or turned up on Thursday, actually. And the stock is moving up. So it works out very well. Now, looking at the weekly chart here, you can see that ENPH, and I was in and out of this stock several times. It really got hammered here, and it's just really starting to take off again. Well, we hope it's taking off. Here's a white candle. Even though there was a long wick on this weekly candle here, it closed at the top of its range, and then this is representing this week. So the trend appears to be changing, and I use the word appears because I don't know what's going to happen, but if you look at the group over here, that's always a good sign. So John, you may be in for a move here. Yeah, well, Tom, yeah, you can yeah, that's my point. You can type in any symbol. You don't have to come through the warehouse, but when you are prospecting through the warehouse, then you can use either chart, really, to tell you the truth. But nothing's going to happen here. See, I don't believe ENPH is in this group. Oh, that's near the 18. Let me go to a larger group here, and it wouldn't be fan up. We know that. No, it didn't pass the screen on Friday. It probably did on Thursday, though. And unfortunately, I can't go back, but that's the advantage of being able to use chart number 2, because I can go back here and see where that occurred. All right. Now let's do something else here. I'm going to. One thing I haven't pointed out is see this green bar here. That's where the fan is up and down. And so if the fan is still in effect, even though this is coming down, it remained in effect until this point right here. I only go back a year, I think, on this. So back in this area, obviously on ENPH, the fan would have been down. Let me check something. It only goes back 1 year. Let me make it 2 years. See. Well, I don't have any down fans. Fan down. I usually just keep it on 1 year because it's faster. So even going back 2 years, you can see where the fan was in place. I don't want to spend time on that, but it's just kind of handy to have that. Okay, what I want to do now is the time goes so quickly. If you like this low pivot technique, and You want to go from the top down. I'm going to go to or before I go to the groups, if you want to go where the active stocks are, you can just do this on not all NASDAQ. Well, you can do it on all NASDAQ. Go to the major markets components and use the NASDAQ 100. And this is where the action is. You can see only 21 securities past this. If you want to use just stocks with earnings growth, I'll show you that in a minute. But first of all, before I lose my train of thought, I want to go into the industries, and I'm going to go, I have to reopen the quick pick, top down, wrong place, number 3. Use number 3 because it's advances versus declines. You can see the semiconductor devices are on top, professional services. Number 2, semiconductors, number 3. So I'm going to change to the industry group on devices. And now I'm going to go back to my pivots and let's see if anything comes up. Okay, why can't I see them? Here they are. Low pivots unconfirmed intraday. And you can see that several stocks, here's that Photronics, passed this screen today. So if a group is moving and you want to just come in and see if you can catch one of these stocks. I believe I talked about Photronics earlier. If you want to catch one of these stocks and see if you can pick it up on a low pivot point, this is the way to do it. I clicked on the same stock. Let's look at the next one. Okay, here we go. Now here you can see up here that the fan is down. This is what I was trying to find on M phase, but here the fan is down. So, you know, putting it in context, you're fighting a lot of overhead resistance here. There's no weekly uptrend, that's for sure. It's just kind of bouncing around. And yet the pivot is here. The buy point is below this. I made it too high. But you can see that there is some volume coming into this, and this histogram just peaked over today, so the 3 went up through the 6. But be aware that you've got a ton of overhead resistance over here on this one. Let's compare. I want to go back to Photronic. Now look at the weekly chart on this. You know, strong weekly chart, pullback, and the pivot is here. Let's look at one more. CEVA, C-E-V-A. Once again, weekly chart's pretty darn weak here. I don't see 2 consecutive weeks in a row where it was up. And your fan was in place to this point. It hasn't turned negative yet, but this stock has been going down. There is what some people like to refer to as the J flag. Low volume test followed by a confirmation here. But once again, here is your buy point. You have to be aware of where you are. You know, what's the context of this? Well, the context is you've had a strong downtrend. You're below a lot of the moving averages. This could be just a short counter trend rally. It could move up here and then go right back down again. But obviously, we don't know any of that, do we? Let's do this with another group. I'm going to go back. And then I have to bring this up. Go back up here to number 3. Should we try the professional services? Change to industry group. I'm going to go to the low pivot unconfirmed. And here's one that closed at nearly 97% of its daily range. CBiz Inc. Doesn't trade a lot of volume, but it was up today. Okay, you can see that the fan is in place. Here's your low pivot. There's a confirmation buy. The weekly chart is strong. This is what you want to look for, in my opinion, because, you know, the odds are more in your favor if the stock is in an uptrend and it's just pulled back a little bit and you have a low risk entry. Why is it a low risk entry? Because I'm going to position size this with my stop just below. It wouldn't be that high. It would be about 4 cents, 4 or 5 cents below the wick on the pivot. And I know exactly how much money I'm risking. And if the market stays strong and it keeps going, you're going to make some money. Look back here at this one. Your stops here, your buys here. It goes from well, let's say you bought it here. And you have a trailing stop on it. Let's say you get stopped out here. That's 13.1% in 12 periods. It's not like making 10% a day, but you know, that's a pretty good return if you can do this with several stocks at the same time. Now, all of these green bars, a lot of them never did get executed. This one got executed, went up to here. Maybe you would have taken this stock off a little bit earlier. Had this effort to rise, but there was an upper wick, and then there's a black candle the next day. Anyway, that's irrelevant. Let's look at one more in this group. Let's look at this one because the intraday range is almost 90%. Very choppy weekly chart, but look at this. Several weeks in a row, it's been up. So the trend on the weekly chart has changed. Here it shows you the fan is negative. These bars here that are magenta rather than green, it means that those are potential shorts if the stock goes down and takes out the low. These are high pivots. There's a pivot here, right here. It didn't go down though, so you're never executed. But here it has been basing. Here is a VPA flag, which I like to see somewhere in the past few days, and this would have been filled today. Remember your context though. You know you're going to have some overhead resistance because of this huge bar right here, and that's more than likely an earnings bar. Tiny volume. Yeah, 184,000. Is that what you meant, Tom? Or did you mean yeni volume? Just kidding. Okay, my point here is most of you who are doing this intraday, you are going in here and you are rebuilding these industry groups if you're using Thinkorswim because you're getting the quotes throughout the day. And then you can go top down and you can look for, especially, you know, on a strong day like today, you can look for stocks that are showing low pivots and potential trades. I'd recommend doing it fairly early in the trading session so they don't get too far away from you. I actually bought AMD today because it was doing this, and I bought it too late. And I'm down a little bit, but I'm not too concerned about it because I have a tight stop on it. But here it is right here. And I bought it later in the day, but you can see that it took out yesterday's wick and it was trading up quite a bit higher. Let's take a look at the weekly chart. You can see another reason I did it is because the weekly chart has been so strong too. But, oops, I didn't mean to do that. It's just the way it works. You take your chances and you put your stops in. If you get stopped out, that's the way it goes. But look how beautifully this worked out. Really on all of these, coming off of this pivot here, from here. I'm a little late to the game. But let's say you bought that to here is a 44.7. Ah, darn it. Let me do that again. Let's say anybody bought this and stayed with it. You have to stay with it, obviously. Up to this point. And I'll close this. And if you look down here, it's a 44.4% change over 29 periods. The group is going up. There are several other opportunities to get into this stock. I'll bring this back up. And let's just take it from this one. So the buy point was here to here. And that's 23, almost 24% over 13 periods. And that is coming off of a very low risk entry. So you can see why I think this is an extremely valid way to approach looking for stocks. I'm going to clear all my annotations. So when I ship these charts, at some point you don't have my annotation. If you ever get charts from me that are marked up and you don't want them, all you have to do is right mouse click or hit alternate E and that gets rid of all the annotations. Okay, geez, I didn't lose anybody. That's pretty good. Demo how to rebuild indexes again. Sure, Tom. You just go into the designer. You have to have Thinkorswim running in the background and updated. You can do a manual update, or I usually just let it run every 5 minutes. And you go into industries, just click on that, and you select rebuild indexes in group, and it takes the current stock prices and rebuilds those indexes. So you're current. Every time you do this, I should have closed that warehouse view. I recommend closing the warehouse view when you do this because sometimes it slows it down if industries is showing over here. It's not slowing it down this time, so. And then I'm going to click through to the warehouse. I don't know why it's not showing, but there we go. And this is current information about where the strength is in the groups. It's extremely handy. Paul uses it several times a day, and other people do too, but he's the one that uses it most. He uses it a lot more than I do because I'm usually busy dreaming up ideas for you guys. Okay, any questions? First of all, what do you think of this low pivot? I didn't even get on the confirmed. Let me do a 2-minute deal on that. I usually use the unconfirmed. Let's go back. Let me do something else here. I'm going to go to all securities. I'll go over a little bit this time. Well, yeah, except we all like those California trips. You get a lot more done here doing it online, I'll guarantee you. But, okay, let me go to all securities. Let's just go through a a quick thing here. I'm in all securities. Let's say that I'm interested only in stocks with earnings momentum. And I want earnings per share and revenue growth with rising earnings estimates for the current quarter. So what I do, I'm going to make a group of 582 stocks. Now these stocks, I'm not requiring a 10 or 20% growth. I'm just requiring a positive growth. So I'm going to make a group, and I'll just call this EPS Rev Growth. 582 stocks. I don't need an index. And I'm going to go to pivots. I'll go to the unconfirmed intraday. I'll limit it to stocks where the fan is up. And you can see that the first stock that comes up because of my combo is Best Buy. And let's take a look at Best Buy. Okay, sold off. Here is your pivot low. Your buy point is right in here. It gapped open, came back down. If a buy stops in there with a limit, you would have been filled. Why did it pass the screen? Because look at the earnings growth. The past 2 quarters was positive, as is the revenue growth. And the estimate for the current quarter is 11.83%. So it meets all of the criteria of the filter. And Best Buy is moving up now, okay? Weekly chart looks pretty decent. The same, we're seeing this in a lot of these stocks from last week. They were just falling off, but that's all changing now. Let me look at something quickly. Well, the comp closed up 112. Okay, now this is the low pivot point. Now, I'm going to change this to the confirmed. Now, what do I mean by confirmed? These are stocks, and I want to change to the other chart. See, there's no bar on here because that's a $1.45 stock, but there's no green bar in here because this is not an unconfirmed low pivot. I want to go back to the other VFB chart. And I'm going to choose a different stock rather than a $1.44 stock. How about Ritchie Brothers Auctioneers? I clicked on the wrong one. Okay, here's Ritchie Brothers. It was confirmed. The green bar is here. Here's your low pivot. But I consider this a confirmed stock because if you look very closely, this high, it's hard to see. Let's see if I can go to. This high here is higher than the closing price from the prior day. That's just the way I had to put this filter together. So I considered this pivot here already confirmed. And Ritchie Brothers passed that test today. The unconfirmed, I believe, works better. But this is here for you too. I almost bought this stock today. In fact, I had an order in for it. It got away from me and I canceled the order and then it came back and I would have been filled, but I didn't. Okay, so once again, you can see this close here. This one actually closed higher than the prior day. This was the pivot the prior day. This was confirmed as of Friday, and there was a low volume test on this. So this would have actually been a good trade, wouldn't it? So that is the difference. Confirmed on Friday. This is today. Confirmed because it was, it took out the entire candle from that day. But this was a pivot. And why was this a pivot? because this low is lower than this low, and it was confirmed on Friday. So you have your option of doing either one of them. And we can spend more time on this in the future. Both of them work pretty well, and I just really concentrate on those towards the top of the list. But you can flip as many charts as you want to. But what have I done here? I've combined stocks with EPS and revenue growth with the pivots, and that way, you read the weekly charts, the daily charts, and you're looking for low risk entries is what you're looking for. All right, well that's an hour and 10. I'm going to call it a day. I want everybody to have a safe and happy Thanksgiving. And I get them 3 times a month, Tom, so I'm really used to the infusions. Thank you, though. Yeah, you're welcome. I plan to have a decent Thanksgiving. We'll see what happens with this market. As I mentioned earlier, thanks, Mike, and Tom, and Piers, and Marvin, and everybody. You can spend a ton of time analyzing the market, and I don't really know how much good it does. Sure, you want to look for trends and everything, but there are so many cross currents that I think it's really just best to concentrate on individual stocks rather than spending a ton of time analyzing the indexes, because it can just lead to confusion. We've had a lot of Hindenburgs, and so far they haven't been a thing. So I don't know. I think Gill, I've heard him speak. Well, he used to speak at all the Woodward and Brown seminars, and he said he doesn't pay any attention to the indexes. He must pay a little attention, but primarily he just focuses on individual stocks. Anyway, that's all I have to say today. I'll try to get this video out this afternoon for people that weren't able to make it, and give these techniques a try, and let me know what you think of them. Okay? Thanks again. I'm going to shut it down.